highlights from the last segment. You may highlight something, circle something that was impactful. That was really good. I like going through the alphabet, but that virtues that was good. Really good. Like how he just really, really capitalized on the virtues, and if you don't have character, you can't lead. It's like,
I like just those interview questions, you know, define integrity. As a pastoral staff, I just never thought of that. Like,
Yeah.
why haven't I thought of that?
Yeah.
That's a good interview question.
I like how many people are better since you were there.
no, that's really good.
That one
Yeah.
is like,
Okay, so do you remember the question that he said move the whole
the bell curve.
You remember that one? I thought every second.
Oh yeah, to get rid of low achievers.
Yeah, get rid of the D students.
What did he ask him?
So
He told them about the oral final. It's gonna be an
Oh,
oral
yeah.
final.
And that made him upset, so they said,
Uh-huh.
heck.
they didn't want to
Yeah.
do that.
So
Yeah.
They wouldn't do it.
Okay, so this is what I was trying to apply. It's like, well, so
Right.
how do you apply that to, there he is. How do we apply that to our world? Did you have
I
any
know.
thoughts that came to mind? I was just sitting there kind of going, I was stuck on that thought, and I'm like, we gotta have a staff meeting and talk about this.
I thought the same thing.
Really?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean to help the people that shouldn't be there move on
I
or
think
whatever?
you identified like the people that are maybe struggling and figure out, okay, what, like, is it gonna be like we need to have an in-person meeting once a week. And some people really have a hard time with that these days. Or, you know, kind of, we're gonna talk about growth, you know, like what's your bottom, what's your D student in your group? And what's gonna make them struggle? Which you don't wanna think about, like, that's an awful way to think, but if you wanna move the bell curve and like capitalize on your top students,
Depends on what the group is.
that's true.
What is an authentic? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Sometimes there's people in your church that, I like to call them the wolves, that shouldn't be there, they don't wanna be there, but they're part of that. I would classify those as that D student, that they don't wanna be there anyway, they're just there to make trouble, they're just there to make
To
problems.
find a question that can
Let's
sort that.
Let those people go on.
To give them the opportunity.
Give them a reason to walk out, because they don't wanna be there anyway, give them a reason to walk out and go on somewhere else, so that they're not inhibiting the rest of the class. That's what he talked about, he says, these are the ones that are bringing us down, because they don't show up to class, so nobody else thinks they have to show up to class.
Alright.
It's those wolves inside us that we just wanna move
You
on.
just triggered a question. Did you have something else?
No, I was gonna say that the things that authentic, real people that love Jesus, wanna help people, would want to do, but those are the harder things to do. For the people that just want a transactional position, or they wanna, they want something for what's in for them, they're gonna not wanna do
Yeah,
the real work.
that's good. That's really good. Well, goodness, let me pray for us. We'll dive in. Father, thank you for this time. And I just pray that this would be effective for, I don't know, just for all of us as we try to understand how that this whole idea of mentoring or even passing that baton is really what this is all about. So I pray that we can do that well. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So introducing the people here at the front. This is Dick Young, as you know. We've been honoring him this whole weekend, and I'm going to talk a little bit more even about him. But he has mentored a lot of people. A lot of people in that our audience have had time with Dick Young, and his impact in our region and our church planting movement is significant. So, a couple words, Dick. Thanks for being here.
Please, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I kind of had an epiphany, that I was not a very good student, and I always saw myself that I would be eliminated because I didn't match up academically in school and some subjects with other people. And when he said, maybe putting all those things together, and what did I say to you, Ruthie?
I think I might have done some things right.
Yeah.
You did a lot.
I'm telling you, I appreciate the fact that you've done this for me, and I appreciate that, and I pretty well harbored the fact that I was pretty insignificant, and that I wasn't quite qualified to do what, well, he's so smart. Galen is, and the people that help Robbie, Renee is so smart. Merle's so smart, all these people, Ruthie's so smart, that's why we did, that's why we paid her. Because of her, but I think there probably are a lot of people like me, who don't feel very spiffy about themselves. In some areas of my life, I was able to achieve. But in some areas, you know, where you're weak and where you don't have giftedness, that can cloud everything else in your life. You know, and I still remember when I was a freshman and I was at the University of Minnesota, and I went to, you know, you had to go see an advisor, and he said, you know, have you thought about doing something other than being a student? It's really encouraging.
I'm gonna share with you something that I guarantee you did right. I'm gonna hold off on that thought just a second. This is Isaiah Singh. Isaiah is one of the, well, we have a group that we call Young Guns. And the Young Guns are, they've been residents at China Hills Church, or they're on staff, and they are young people on staff. And so we go through J.I. Packer's Knowing God. We go through, is it Michael Kugel's Reality. And those are, Greg Kugel, thank you. And Gregory Kugel, there we go. And it talks about the deep theological things of what Christ did and who we are in Christ, our identity in Christ, having forgiveness, this great transaction of what Christ gave us and what we gave him as our sin, he gave us his righteousness. This incredible transaction. So anyway, we go through those things, and I keep telling these guys, it's like, I just want you to know, and he's been to seminary, but I just want you to know, this is the stuff that I missed out on when I was in seminary. I was one of those guys that had 2 or 3 jobs. I drove in, did my classes, and went to work, and I never had that what you might want to call that one-on-one mentoring kind of stuff. And so I value it very much. But anyway, Isaiah has been a part of our, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years maybe?
Yeah.
And so tell us just a little bit about you and what your track is.
Sure. Well, when I first came on here, I was right out of Bible college, and it was crazy. I wasn't looking for this place. God just lined everything perfectly. Where I found a job at a restaurant, and I was perfectly content with that. And at Bible college, I recently discovered a passion for worship leading and diving into that. And I was like, man, it would be really cool to explore on that and hone those skills in and learn what it actually means to worship and not just play music. And then I just get a text like, hey, from a friend of mine who used to work here. She's like, hey, by the way, I got a job for you. I'm like, what? You found a job for me? Like, cool, what is it? Like, Walmart distribution? Is it construction? What is it? She's like, it's at Shine Hills. I'm like, oh, okay. Doing what? She's like, it's a worship residency. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I came and checked it out, and it's literally God handed it right to me, and I couldn't be more grateful for that because of the people I've met, the things I've learned. Big thing that within mentorship that I've learned personally is, one, what you do has a ripple effect, that has a ripple effect, that has a ripple effect. This is a prime example of one thing that he did is generational, not just one thing, and it's going to continue. My heart is to find somebody, raise them up, and teach them where God's truly calling them. And another thing that I've learned is that God's calling on your life is not strictly occupational. And a lot of Christians, a lot of people in church, only view calling as their job. It's like you talk to somebody like, okay, what do you feel called to do? Or somebody's telling you, it's like, oh, I feel called to be a pastor. I feel called to be an accountant. I feel called to be a worship leader, whatever. But it's often tied to occupation. And something that when you take a step back and study scripture, and you find mentorship, there's two things with that is God's calling, if it's like a pie chart, occupation or a specific assignment is like 5% of it. The first call is like 75% of that pie is a call to salvation. And then the next call is a call to a life worthy of that calling. And then a call to work in Genesis. And then a salvific work, the Great Commission. And those things make up the most of the pie. And then specific assignment is what is that 5%. And a lot of Christians, especially younger people, oftentimes if they're trying to fill that hunger, they're looking to 5% of that pie rather than the rest of it. And within mentorship, you learn that you have to be seeking all of that to get that fulfillment, to get that satisfaction in the Lord. But with specific assignment, something that mentorship really helps with, and also an environment like this church or just church in general, is there's three things that really solidify God's calling on your life. One is natural skills or talent in that area. Two is a consistent desire, consistent heart thing. It's not like when you watch Rocky and you want to become a professional boxer, right? It's like, it's been there, God has placed it on your heart. And then three, and this is where the mentorship really comes in, is affirmation from those around you. And something that I've experienced here, and what has made it really easy to step into roles that I believe I've been called into, is that affirmation, is the parts where it's, I believe this, but other people around me also believe this and encourage me in this area.
So we're gonna dive into some of that, because this is the Google generation I'm talking about. So what I want to do today is I want to explain to you really some mishaps, some failures, a few successes in this journey. I want to share first of all 2 Timothy. This is where it comes from. 2 Timothy 2:2. It says this: "And what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who are able to teach others also." And by the way, we have a couple of women in this Young Guns group. We've had several that have come through this. But I will tell you, I think I've learned a lot from Isaiah and Cole in particular. And that was the last group of residents. And that's why I came up with this idea of how are you going to mentor this next generation, because it's different than I have. He hasn't heard all the stuff I'm going to share with you, so he's going to go, oh, that's why he messed up or whatever like that. So I came out of seminary, 1993, and I've already said this, but Prof. Hendricks had a big impact on us. And if you ever went to Promise Keepers, you heard Prof. Hendricks say this: everyone needs a Paul. Everybody needs a Barnabas. Everybody needs a Timothy. And a Paul is somebody older than you that has walked the ministry you can learn from. A Barnabas is somebody that's beside you. Someone maybe your own age and kind of your own, you can walk with you. And a Timothy, somebody you can pour your life into. And I will tell you, there was a whole bunch of, when Dick was up there, I was looking out among the crowd, there was a whole bunch of Timothys. I was one. I know Renee, Dan, Raul, Ty Desinfants, and many more and what happens when you get a Paul like this, everybody says, yeah, I was one of his Timothys, you know. It's kind of like with Prof. Hendricks, you know. If you walk by him in the hall, you say, yeah, I was discipled by Prof. Hendricks, you know. He's such an icon that you just if you just got close to him, you talk about that, right? Dick's like that. It's like, if you ever spend any time with him or spent, I don't know, got to serve under him or be on a board with him, you said, no, I feel honored to have been around a Paul like Dick Young. And so I will tell you, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but the things that I learned from Dick, but it's not so what he learned that I want this session is about. It's my approach and how I was encouraged to approach coming out of seminary in 1993 versus the approach that I learned from his generation. And I'm going to tell you what I think I've learned, and you can tell me if I'm right or not. Okay. We haven't rehearsed any of this. I'll just tell you. I just said, hey, just like last night, he was leading worship. Could you come and be a part of my? And I did that with Dick as well. We haven't talked about any of these things, so they don't even really know what we're was told when I came out, the Paul, Barnabas, and Timothy. But what I was told is, and I would go to leadership conferences and things like that, they would say, go find somebody you want to be like and go get in their hip pocket. Learn everything you possibly can from them. Whether you have to starve to death to do it, I don't care. Take whatever sacrifice you got to do. Go get in their hip pocket. When we came up here, I realized Dick was 52 years old and was a soul winner. He was a shepherd. He had a walk with God that I admired that deeply. And I thought, this guy can teach me how to be a pastor. 4 years in seminary at Dallas Seminary does not teach you how to be a shepherd. They will teach you how to be, knowledge of God. They'll teach you how to think biblically, how to process things, all that stuff. But they will not teach you how to be a shepherd. They will not teach you how to be a soul winner. I had to actually do noon. There was a guy that came in and shared the 4 spiritual laws from, at that time it was called Campus Crusade. And it's like we had to seek out those kinds of things to learn how to be a soul winner. They didn't teach you those things in class. They're going to teach you how to parse verbs. They're going to teach you how, the different languages. They're going to talk to you theological things, the omnipotence and the, presence of God and who you are in Christ and all those things. Wonderful stuff. All stuff good. But they're not going to teach you how to be, or didn't teach me how to be a pastor. And when I realized that Dick Young, in his story of he was actually a what ministry were you at?
University.
He was a soul winner. And I just ran him for just a little bit and was like, he knows how to take a conversation and turn it to spiritual things, and he knows how to get through those places where you get stuck sharing the gospel. I got in his hip pocket the very best I could. When he went to, I'd never been to a hospital visit. Dick, next time you go, I want to go. Hospice, I want to go. The things I learned, I'm going to tell you some of the things that I remember, and then you can tell me everything I forgot. So, or that I should have remembered. But I learned so much from him, and I thought I'd be here 2 years and we go plant a church. We were here 4 years, and it's like 4 years in Dallas Seminary, 4 years learning how to think biblically, 4 years under Dick Young how to do biblically. It was a good job. So, but that's how we were told coming out of seminary at that particular time. Now, this is where he's going to learn in just a second the failure that I assumed on the Google generation. If you don't mind me calling it, you're that. You're that.
That's fine.
You're my title. Okay.
Yeah.
Because here's what, and part of it, I'm going to give myself a little bit of take a little bit of the pressure off, because part of it is you were under our worship leader, and he took a different role, and I kind of inherited you as especially as the resident for worship. I kind of inherited. It's like, well, but with Cole, he was kind of under my tutelage as well, and you both said the same thing in your exit interview. And I'm going to summarize what I heard. I think our expectations were different, and you were expecting to do this and this and this. I'd say you both were wanting to do this and this and this, and we fell short of meeting those expectations. And you wanted to learn about. I'm not even saying necessarily, but Cole mentioned this too. Wanted to learn about going to hospital visits, or wanted to learn about those. I said, well, I was sitting back waiting for you guys to say, I want to go with, because that's how I grew up, right? I was told to go get in their hip pocket, and I also didn't want to impose on you. It's like, well, if you don't want to know this stuff, I'm not going to make you do it, right? And I'm necessarily you, you guys. And see, what my failure was is like, my starting point was the wrong spot. These guys, in my opinion, weren't told to go get in somebody's hip pocket that you want to be like and learn everything you possibly can. It's a different world. And I'll let you even explain what the world that, I'd like to hear from you, what your expectation, because I'm going to tell you what I think the expectation was and where I failed in missing them, where I missed it. Because I think if we would have started off with expectations, what do you want out of this, and what do you want from me? And I never did ask him that stuff. And the other thing that I took on for these guys, and I think I did it sort of well, but I gave them a lot of opportunities to preach or to lead or whatever. Now, maybe not all that you wanted, and we can talk about that issue too. I think that was a good one. But But that was what, okay, mentoring for me was two things. One, here, watch this video, plug it in, play, right? Here's a guy that's, it's kind of a class, you know, here's, go online, Google this guy, watch this video. And the other one is, I'm gonna give you some opportunities. But what was missing was the stuff that I knew I needed from Dick Young. I was like, well, I'm waiting for them to ask, and they never asked, so that was a big miss. I think that's one thing, if I could have you take away anything, is I think we're coming from two different generations and two different ideas of what mentoring and ministry, maybe it transcends ministry, but mentoring and ministry looks like. So I'd like, just talk to us a little bit about, you know, that exit interview and some of that, the things that you felt were misses, because I think that's important.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes from generations is the adaptation of communication and how that really impacts everything, and the expectation for communication. When I first came on, I was working underneath somebody else other than Galen, and so the lack of communication was, I did sit down and we talked about expectations, which that was the part of communication that I've been raised up in. It's like, okay, make sure you know what you're signing up for, make sure you know what your goals are, what you're going for, and just have a layout, and then go for it.
You did that with James.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so we talked about specifics, things like that, and where the lack of communication was when he stepped down, I automatically assumed that Galen was in the
Right.
middle,
That's
but
true.
they weren't on the same page.
That's true, didn't communicate,
Yeah,
that's true.
and so, my expectations with my original boss, James, was underneath Galen when I kinda went underneath him,
Well,
and that he had different ideas, different visions for things, and there were just two different pathways going.
well, that was part of it. So that was, part of it, we were just kinda, the situation we're thrown into. But I still think, and my failure in this is I didn't go back and say, you know, what exactly do you wanna learn? I knew what you wanted to do, but like with Cole, for example, I didn't know that he wanted to go to hospital business. I would have gladly taken him. But what we did though is, here, read this book, here, watch this video, here, you know, YouTube this guy. And I'm not saying those are wrong things, but it's like, I would say this generation is really good at that, and they're okay with that, probably when they're little, mom plugged in some kind of video and said, here, sit here so I can cook dinner, I don't know. We all did that, we did that with cartoons with our kids too, but it's like, but we just kinda said, okay, that's the go-to, and I'll just tell you, in my opinion, there's a lot missed when we just assume that, here, watch this, you're gonna get this information. So I'm gonna hold that just real quick, so let me tell you some examples of what I learned from Dick Young, that there's no way I could have ever learned, I don't know, you can't learn this stuff in a book, I guess is what I'm trying to say. One of those, I remember we went to a hospital visit, and you went in, and you talked a little bit, and short, sweet, prayed, and left. And as we were leaving, getting down the hall, I mean, we were there maybe 5 minutes, I don't know. We weren't there very long. And you just said, just so you know, when people are sick or in the hospital, have a sheet over them and they're not looking there and feeling their best, don't go spend a whole bunch of time. Get in, pray with them, tell them you know, and you're there, and don't linger. I'm just like, I've used that a ton. That's been solid gold for me. You can't find that in a textbook. You're not gonna find that in seminary. You're not gonna find that. Those are the kinds of things. That's one. Another one, and then you can tell me all the ones that I missed. Another one is you can't. The reason I understood a walk with God is because of him. I was around some godly men in seminary, but I never saw their devotional life. I never saw them process a problem with a staff issue, and then come back and say, you know, I was reading in 1 Kings, and this is what happened, and I feel like God was showing me for that king, 1 Kings, that's how I had to deal with this situation. He did that a lot. It came out of his devotional life, and it'd be like, we'd be sideways about something in the church somewhere. But the way that he dealt with it, I saw him go away. God showed me this verse, he'd share the verse, and it's like, wow, that's cool. And that impacted. You can't get that in a book. You've got to be able to get close enough. I didn't do that for these guys. They missed all that. So, you know, we did some really good stuff, I think, with Young Guns and all that. But you guys didn't get that stuff. And that's part, I feel, I don't know, I wish if we had some do-overs, those are some things I would say, guys, I want you to, not that I got it right, but here's the problem, see, I went after him to find out how he did this stuff. These guys were really asking, it's like, I didn't wanna impose, oh, this was how you have the part time, no, they're gonna go, yeah, I don't know, that's how I feel, you know. It's like, part of me is like, well, they don't ask about this stuff, I guess they already got it, or they don't want it from me, you know, that's, and I don't know how to maneuver, manage that, but I will tell you that I wish that everything that I learned from Dick, I would have been able to pass on to you guys. And for whatever reasons, and I think it's because we didn't have it all laid out at the beginning, or even given you permission to say, oh, you know, open that up. I think I wish that if I had a do-over, I would do that. Because there's a lot of stuff you can't learn in a book. Devotional, his quiet time, his walk with God. You know, I saw Dick, I saw his joy on a regular basis, but I saw him get mad about things that need to be angry about. I didn't know, I never saw, my dad, I understood what anger looked like, but I never stood, be angry and do not sin. That kind of stuff, it's like, wow, you can use anger in the right way. You can be angry that what the devil just stole from this person's life. You can be angry about it. You can be angry about stuff in society that's like, we're supposed to be angry about. I learned that from him. It's because I was in his hip pocket and saw it. And it's like, wow, I didn't know that you could use anger in that way and actually make a difference.
How big is my pocket?
It's a big pocket.
I didn't know it was that big.
It was a big pocket. He carried about 200 pounds around. I didn't know if you did that. I was a little lighter then. I was probably more like 175. So that's the blessing that I had because I was encouraged. I'm not sure. I'm going to give you both a chance to talk here. I'm not sure what I could have done, but I don't think your generation is necessarily told, go find that person you want to be like and go get in the hip pocket. Maybe you do. Tell me a little bit about from your, try to generalize, not just you personally, generalize, what are your generation told about mentoring?
Well, for me, my personal life, like my parents did teach me a lot of that stuff too, but it's also, a lot of it was, mentoring is when you're being poured into and being shown things that you aren't even aware of and things like that. And, again, with like the process of coming in here, one of the expectations that was set was with James, he was an expert in the field that I wanted to study, and so like I was underneath him asking him questions
That's
and
a good
things
point.
that I was wanting to learn. And he also presented it as, this is like when I first, like he was trying to pitch me to come on, he said that this is an opportunity for the church to pour into you and show you things and teach you. And so in that, the natural expectation with that type of language was that, okay, they have stuff to show me that I don't know.
Right.
And so I'm just gonna listen
Right.
and like soak in what I can. And then once James stepped down, I had to go underneath Galen, who his expertise are pastoring and shepherding, but not worship, leading, and so it was a little disconnect. But it was also like, it was an interesting scenario, like where transition could have been smoother, and like handing that part, like when I say that part, I mean me off, like like handled in a way that like I would have been continuing on with those expectations, but it's just so abrupt. And so if you have a situation like that without a game plan, you're just kind of flying blind and you're not really sure where to go.
There's a lot of that in your story. I'm generalizing you and Cole both, because I felt like from my failure was I didn't get those those things laid out for you guys, it's like, you know, do you wanna know this, and this? Or, I still think this is where I was I still missed it. I was kind of expecting that if you guys wanted to learn something from me, here's what I did. I went and found it. I would just say that I don't think, and I may be wrong about this, but I don't think that's necessarily the same mentality. And I think we've got to, and with Isaiah or with Cole or with anybody else, I would say has to do, if we're gonna pass on to able men who are able to teach others, men and women, then I would say, I've gotta go figure out how this has gotta be passed. And I don't think I did that very well. And so that was my confession to you. Any thoughts? I mean, I'd like to know what mentoring looked like for you. Maybe who's your Paul, and how did it work for your generation?
I'm thinking about that a lot. And somebody told me one time, and it seems to make sense to me, that a big part of mentoring or discipleship is the smell of it. And that is to being close and to being around people that you want to be like. And I'm very thankful that I could tell you that I was not a very good student. Because what I knew is that I needed people who were better than me. I needed people who could shore up the gifts that God had given me to be a part of a team. And I've always owned that. I've never seen myself as being the sharpest crayon in the box. Though that doesn't mean that I haven't some giftedness that God has given me. He has. Moses wasn't very excited about what God asked him to do. I think he said some things about that.
Yeah.
But you know, God used him in it, and what I've learned is that when God calls you to do something, He doesn't expect you to have all of the answers. He wants you to be willing to allow Him to provide that. And so, one of the things that made a big difference to me were the men that were around me, and the way God seemed to be fashioning my heart. For instance, this is very interesting. You know, when I was a little boy, I'm talking about like 7 or 8. I had this sense that there was unfinished business in my life, believe it or not, that I needed to invite Christ to be my Savior. I remember sitting in a wooden pew with the arm right here, and I remember a sermon saying, "Now, if you need to ask Jesus to come into your life to be your Savior, raise your hand." And I would go like this. I finally went to a camp, the only camp I ever went to, and one night I went back to the cabin, and the cabin leader came in and said, "How can I help you, Dick?" I said, I want to invite Jesus to be a part of my life. I was 9. And I remember that. And I remember my second prayer, and this is mentoring me. My second prayer was, "Lord, I pray that my brother who was with me will also become a believer." I was 9, and the next day he did. I'm 18, and you know, I'm studly, and I'm playing softball with the church softball team, and I got a friend his name is Howie, and Howie's my friend. But the problem with Howie is that he's always been in a foster home, and I'm building a relationship with Howie, my friend, and we're doing things together. And Howie says, I'm talking to him and says, "Howie, would you like to ask Jesus to be a part of your life?" He said, "Yeah, I would." I didn't know how to do it. So I said, "Let's go see our pastor." So 10 o'clock at night, I drove over to the pastor's house, and he came out in his pajamas. Yeah, he did, Leonard Carroll. And he said, "Dick, how can I help?" Well, I said, "Howie wants to accept Christ, and I don't know how to help him."
Oh, man.
That was a learning moment for me. Well, what I'm saying is that so much of mentoring is about also mentoring ourselves. become like the Lord, and the smell of it is that you put yourself around other people. I remember significant, I was thinking about this because I know you're gonna ask me that question. I was thinking about the people that entered my life. I was thinking about one of my Sunday school teachers who got to know me well and liked me and knew that I liked to hunt. And he took me hunting with him in the back of an old Ford station wagon. We went to northern part of Minnesota and slept in the back of the deal. And I still remember before we put our sleeping bags on and before we went to sleep, he said, Dick, it's always my practice to read a little scripture and pray before we go to bed. And so we did that in the back of a station wagon. I still remember that. I remember the smell of it. I remember the closeness of that. I remember when I was a freshman at the university, and I remember a guy from Campus Crusade who went all the way across the Twin Cities over to Payne Avenue where our church was to meet with me after church so he could take me out and have a Coke. The smell of it. And his asking me questions about that. I remember a friend of mine who periodically would talk to me about following the Lord. I'm saying that last summer I had 2 little boys working for me in my orchard. One was 13, one was 15. And I always try to find somebody to encourage in their life with the Lord. Somebody younger than me or somebody that I can encourage. And before that I had an older kid working for me and we're working in the orchard, and I told him how I became a believer. And several weeks later, he went up to the cemetery by himself. There's an interesting story. His grandparents were buried there. And at the cemetery, he was thinking about what I've said, and he asked Jesus to be a part of his life. I mean, mentoring. I think sometimes we think mentoring is some kind of a prescription or something, but it's just loving somebody. It's loving somebody and seeing hope for them. And I am so grateful. I am so grateful that I wasn't so smart. And I'm so grateful that I had a Renee come into my life. She poured so much into my life. She was so helpful to our team. And for you to do the same thing. And for the likes of a Richard Larson to go with me as we drove through Wyoming praying for the little cities. And I saw his heart as a wheat farmer and a potato farmer, and he had lots of money and he liked to use it for the Lord. But his whole passion was seeing people come to Christ. Now, that's the smell of it. That's the rubbing shoulders with it. I remember when I finally made the team, I played hockey with the University of Minnesota. And actually when I was a senior, I was the captain of the team. But I remember when I was my first game, and the ritual was that we had a training meal, and then we took a nap in the dorm, and then we go into the locker room, and then we played the game. And the captain of the team asked me, Dick, would you share a room with me tonight? He was the captain of the team. And we got into the room. You know what he did? He took his Bible out, and he said, Dick, it's my practice to read some scripture and to pray before we go to sleep. And we did that. And you know how impressed I was with him? Somebody who I admired, who was a leader of the team, reached out to me, a freshman, or a sophomore at that point. I was redshirted as a freshman. And then I wanted to do the same thing when I became the captain.
That's good stuff. I love that. The smell of it is, that's perfect.
Can't you smell it?
Yeah, but you gotta get close enough, and that's why I don't think I had a lot of people teach me in seminary. I never had that experience, just to see what somebody, the smell of it for someone's devotional life, or how to lead someone to Christ, or struggling to, how are you gonna open up a conversation even. We talked about that a lot. And I'd get stuck in a conversation, I'd go talk to Dick, and I said, here's what happened, and we go kind of replay it. he said, well, maybe next time you could say this and this, and it helped me get, after, I don't know how long it was, but 4 years, I was fearless as to trying to lead someone to Christ, because I've pretty much gone through all the places where you can get stuck in a conversation. And a lot of that's just because I got stuck, but to him, hey, how do you do this? I love that, the smell of it's awesome. Okay, I wanna talk real quick, and then I wanna ask some questions. What's our time, do you guys know?
I think we got until noon.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got plenty of time. But we definitely wanna have you guys, just observations that you have about mentoring. But one of the things that I think, I'm gonna say that I think I did right. Cause I think there's some things I got wrong. But one of the things that I have in my mind is, and this is kind of from a coaching perspective, is that one of the things I don't think we can pass on, I can test for, but I did that with everybody. I can test for humility. The one thing I'm looking for, because I've seen young people go out, I've seen guys my age, coming out of seminary, go out and blow churches up. Because what Prophet always say is like, it took you 4 or 5 years to get through this institution. It's gonna take you 4 or 5 years to get over it. But you gotta get over it. Because if you don't, you're gonna go out and blow a church up. You're gonna think, you gotta change everything, you gotta make it perfect, whatever it is. And I saw that happen a lot. And so what happened is, that somebody didn't challenge them enough in this idea of humility. It's like, you're not all that in a bag of chips. Christ is, you're not. You know, something in that, humility has to be a part of this thing somewhere. And so, one of the things, I gave these guys a lot of opportunities. Gave young guys opportunities to preach on stage, young guys like him opportunities to lead. And I always, every time I did this, and I did this with this last group was 3 of you, and I tested them, and I don't know if you guys knew it was a test, but this was my test. And I tested them in this idea of, could they take a no from a leader? I'm gonna get on my soapbox for just a second. We have young parents in here. I watch this with my kids that are parenting our grandkids. It's like, they're almost afraid to tell this kid no. I'm just like, no, you can say that. You don't have to be their friend. You can tell them no. Because they need to learn how to take a no, because sometimes they're gonna hit a no, and they're gonna have to figure out that that's not fatal, it's just no. Or not now, or wait. And God did that for me a lot. I had to learn that a lot. So there was I'm gonna try to paint the scenario, and you can repaint it if you want. But you had something that you were designed to do. I can't remember. It was like an outreach event.
It's a worship night.
Worship night. There you go. All right. So you
I
remember that.
remember.
But you can come in and paint this picture too. There was a worship night, and you had wanted to have everybody there and a prayer time and all that. And the thing I thought was great idea, but has a tremendous amount of flop potential. Because if you just say worship night or prayer night, it's like, we've done that before, and we had just a handful of people show up. What I was trying to do is like, let's get it around an event. What if we have a prayer night around going back to school and praying for our kids? Now it's like, okay, it doesn't have as much flop potential. That has some sticky stuff to it. So anyway, we went down this road, and I think you can actually tell us your story. I told you no, or I don't know if I said not now, but it felt like a no on this issue. Take it from there and tell me how you felt and processed all that.
Sure. So with that, like, one of the first expectations coming in, so the original plan was we had 16 goals that we wanted to achieve, and one of those goals was a worship night. And so I had been like kind of pouring into that and like preparing and prepping, praying over it, and like envisioning it all. But when that transition happened, it was just shook up a lot of different things, and it ended up being a no. At the time, it was
From me, not from James. It was
yeah. And at the time, it was like, okay, I've prepared a lot and like prepped for this, and it's okay for like no reason at this point now. But a big part of it was I had to like step back and realize like as the head of this church. Like, I have to respect that. And like, if he, like, cause he has years and years of experience here and years of experience out of here too. And if he genuinely thinks that this is not a good idea, then there's probable cause behind that.
Okay, so you're being awful nice. Were you a little bit upset about this?
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, like, I was frustrated, but like it was.
You didn't tell me that, but I found out through other sources. It's like,
Yeah.
this really was frustrating.
It was a mixture of frustration and hurt at the same time. Where it's like, man, I feel like he doesn't trust me. I feel like
Yeah.
I haven't proven myself enough at this point, and it's like, and like a kind of like climbing up a mountain. You know, it's like, ah, man. But in that, you also have to realize that like it's not about me. You're like, and it never was about me. And so it was a mixture of those two thoughts conflicting. And after like genuinely giving it up to God, it's like, man, okay.
But it seems like you really trusted Galen with the leadership of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You were willing to.
For a while there was a little touch and go, I think.
It took a lot.
I will
We're
tell you.
good now,
Yeah,
but.
yeah. What happened on the other side of it? So there's two things, and you gotta swear, Scouts on it, you will not tell the next group of residents.
Yeah.
But what I wanted, and I did this with Cole, and who's the third person that was going through this?
There was Carson and
Carson.
Jacob. I don't know if Jacob was-
Jacob, yeah. And but I wanted you guys to be able, I wanted to test and see, well, there's two things. One, I did think it had flop potential, and I didn't want you to fail. I genuinely didn't want you to fail. And I felt like, the way you're structuring this, I don't see it. Long story of that, we ended up doing a worship night. It was the first one we had out in the amphitheater. I mean, he absolutely hit it out of the park. It was the most powerful thing with our youth. It was awesome. Now, it wasn't the whole church. I think we actually you did a worship night beyond that too, didn't you? Yeah, so, that's right. But anyway, but what I wanted to see is, could you take a no, and I knew you were frustrated, disappointed, disenfranchised, whatever it was, and it's like, well, this was in the contract, this was promised to me, that we'd do this, check this box off. And I just said, yeah, no. And I don't know, Renee, if I ever talked to you about this or not, but maybe we did in retrospect, but I just thought, I don't know how he's gonna respond from this, but if he can come back from this is gonna be huge. And just what you said the key golden words right there. He said, well, I guess this isn't, it's not about me. I don't know, you said 2 or 3 things just now. Like, that's why this guy's so gold. And I guarantee it's not because of the mentoring, it's because he just proved he could take a no, figure it out, and went on. The other thing that I think probably hit you pretty hard, you can just talk about this, is that I think you were kind of hoping for maybe the next step, career path, whatever it is. I was like, dude, I want you to get this education. You've got to get this thing finished. Because I know there's too many guys that don't finish. I had a situation in my life that I almost didn't finish something. And it's like, man, am I ever glad that I finished? You know, in seminary, 2 years in, we had finances and fell apart and this thing. I thought, well, maybe God's saying no or whatever. I was like, okay, I'm gonna throw in the towel. Long story short, God provided. We finished, and I will just tell you, I am so glad. And when you're going through seminary, you think that God needs you out there. You know, the world's going to heck in a handbasket, and He needs you. And here's what you gotta learn. God does not need you. He's got plenty of people, right? He can use you. He doesn't need you. And that's a huge thing for a seminarian to learn, right? And I think I learned that in that year. And I saw these guys learn that. Both he and Cole responded. It's like, oh. And I was really related to respond as well. It's like, dude, and I think I told you in closing, it's like, I just want you to know, I was so impressed the way you handled that no. And you came back and you figured it out and you just hit it out of the park. To me, that was something that I imposed on him, on them. And I think that's still, it's kind of I think it's worth it. Because I think he's gonna go out, he's gonna be a better, I don't know, and he's gonna be able to handle the situation. I do think I still wanna own the part that I did fail in, and I said, I should have got all this information from you, and you guys to start with, and not just plug in something, here, Google this, go watch watch this video and you'll be mentored, because I realize that's not gonna work, and I've got to be more aggressive. As I was aggressive to get in his hip pocket, I think I've gotta get aggressive, because it's a different gear. You guys see the difference? It's a different gear. They're not pushed like we push. It's like, okay, if I'm gonna entrust able men, and he's definitely an able man, who's able to teach others also, then I've gotta go figure out how to get his hip pocket as well. I didn't do that very well. If I had to do it, I would do that. Let's just pause here for a second. Thoughts, questions, comments, go.
I just, when, Dick, when you were talking, it reminded me, I think it's Luke 6:40, a pupil is not above his teacher, and everyone after he's been fully trained will be like his teacher. So I was processing that when you were talking about your story. It's, Gabe and I, you know, what happened with James almost happened overnight, and it's like, you need a backup to a backup plan when you're passing baton to somebody like a resident, and I don't, it just happens so fast. And as far as the residents coming in, they don't know what they don't know, and so that has to be processed as well too, just like visits to the hospital, or what does it look like to what's the word? Let them see what it's like to pray with them, or what's the,
Shadow?
no, the discipleship.
Okay, yeah.
Discipling others
Yeah.
that you're gonna be a part of.
Sure.
So anyway, those are just some
That's
quick
good.
thoughts.
I think you are more in a design mentorship program here. What I'm talking about, they weren't really design mentorship programs.
Yeah, you kind of,
It's just what you do.
yeah.
You build people up, and I never really thought about that being mentoring. That's a good word.
Can I speak to that?
Go for it.
I want to talk about Dick Young and unintentional mentoring, or maybe a better term would be passive mentoring. And this goes exactly where you were heading, Dick. I was in the Alvin bar. I had just ordered a Coors, and the door opens, and so I went over there.
Retirement's wonderful, isn't
Yeah,
it?
see, the smell of the bar. I looked up to see if one of my friends was going to join me, and it was Dick Young walking in the door.
Oh,
I just ordered a Coors. The bartender hadn't gotten it there yet. I'm thinking I can still save this by when they bring the Coors over, I can tell the bartender, what part of 7-Up did you not? And I'm serious. I'm serious. That went through my mind. So Dick comes up and he sits down beside me. He asks me how's things going, and we talked a little bit. And, I don't think I took a sip of my beer till Dick left, but it was there. But then he proceeds back. There's always a pitch game going on. 5 or 6 farmers playing pitch any time of the day. And Dick goes back there, pulls up a bar stool, sits down, and he starts asking these men about how they doing, how's the crop, how's your children by name, how's little Bobby, this and that. And this is why I call it unintentional. I'm sorry, real quick. This is why I call it unintentional mentoring. Because years later,
Yeah. You
Yeah.
remembered all that.
I go,
Yeah.
I saw Dick Young handle something like this one, so I could go in that situation, I could condemn, I could criticize. Or am I gonna go in and I'm gonna sit down, and I think Dick would have ordered a beer that day, actually. And that is unintentional mentoring that has a smell to it. So my point is this, people are watching us. They are watching us, and they're gonna see the good or the bad,
Sure.
and it's gonna change a life.
Good, yes, sir.
So good. I just had a question. You called it mentoring like a Google generation, and I'm assuming you were thinking, they can Google the answers. And
Exactly,
stuff.
exactly right.
And my question, like when I came out of seminary, same thing. I wanted to find some somebody I really looked up to, and I had maybe a naive trust of those that I looked up to. And I look at my kids that are in college right now, and it's almost like they have an ingrained skepticism of leadership. And I don't know if they're just wired differently in that, but I looked up to my leaders and I just couldn't see a flaw in them.
Yeah.
My kids in college, they just assume, based on what they see in failure of leadership, that well, it's only going to be a matter of time before I figure it out. And so it makes mentoring maybe, I have some sympathy towards them in terms of I can see why they would
I
want
think
to.
it's onto something really key. You wanna speak to that at all, just on
Yeah,
your ones?
I think
That's really good.
the generation coming up, so the generation past was about respect, and now it's about trust. And where trust lies is oftentimes trust has to be earned first. And normally, like in a circumstance like you come into a mentorship, it's you trust because you respect.
They're in that
And
position.
we live in a world now where a lot of people misrepresent Christ, and a lot of people use the term Christianity for their own agenda, or the term pastor for their own agenda, their own pleasures, whatever. And that's what we see. That's what the world sees, and that's why there's so many people actively against Christianity. Like you look at somebody and you say, how can you hate Jesus? Like you look at the story of Jesus and you look at the world now, and it's like, where's that disconnect? Like there's a brick wall in between there, and a lot of it has to do with misrepresentatives.
That's true.
And also just gossip and exaggeration. A lot of it, another thing is, like something that was talked about, is owning mistakes. People now have a victim mentality where they oftentimes exaggerate things that have happened to them, or exaggerate things that are happening to other people, just to make them feel like the main character of the story. We're not the main character of our story. Christ is the main character of our story, and we are the image of Christ right now, and we're supposed to live like Christ. But with trust, oftentimes it's broken because we exaggerate, and oftentimes it's abused, and that's without the discipline of owning, and also without the discipline of finding contentment in Christ, because you're trying to find contentment in given image.
Okay, so you said something, I think worth the price of the ticket, that it used to be about respect. I totally get that. Now it's about trust. How can a guy like me, what could I have done, or could I do to foster that trust?
I mean,
Not necessarily for you personally, but just in general.
in general, just be consistent, and which you are. And so like that's why I came in here with trust, and I came in here with the ability to take a no from you and like step back and say, okay, he has an idea, he has a guidance for this and wisdom. It's because you've been consistent and you aren't abusing your position. You aren't doing these different things. It's integrity. If you have integrity, you have respect, you have trust.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that's really
I have a
insightful.
thought on that, I guess. So I feel like somewhere in the middle here is where I feel like I belong between the Google and the Galen. Isaiah.
You're doing the goof.
You got it. But I see like, Galen, you attached yourself to Dick. Like, I'm going with you. Where you going, bud? I'm going with you. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna figure out what you're doing. Where the younger generation, where Isaiah is and where I feel like I'm at to some degree, like I am begging for somebody to ask me to join them. If you invite me, be like, hey, come and get in my pocket. Not weirdly, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
come with me. Hey, I'm gonna do this. Come with me. Hey, I suck at this. Come with me. That there's this, people aren't trying to grab a hold of you and go with you like they used to be.
They're
They
afraid
want
to.
you to invite them to go.
think-
I don't need your help, but I want you to come.
I think it's spot on.
And that
That's
kind
what
of
I think I've learned in this
mentality,
process, but
right.
thank you. That's really good.
that like being intentional about inviting people to go with you. Like, hey, I'm going to the hospital. You want to go? If they say no, whatever.
Yeah.
But invite them next time.
It kind of feels like, imagine you call somebody and you're like, what? You know, that, like being in that position, or somebody invites you to go out to like, hey, let's have a talk, and you sit down, and they're the ones supposed to initiate the talk.
Right.
Oftentimes you're like, what's up? You know, and so it's just like, I understand like what you're saying. It's really
Right.
Well, and so just to pinpoint on that, before I worked here, I worked at a large company, and their exit interviews of the people there was that expectation they should have been mentored, and that's partly why they left the
Right.
organization.
Wow.
But so, I think what they're saying is so true, they're expected to be asked. There's an expectation, and,
right, they
that
got
they're
it.
really wanting it.
That they exit interview what I learned from them. Yes, ma'am.
My generation wants to be pursued.
Okay.
We want we want someone to ask us. Like she was saying, like ask us to come along, ask us to go with them. And it's really hard. I think there's a lot of ingrained like anxiety and fear of inserting ourselves into someone else's life. Like we're not gonna.
I think they're too busy. They got too much stuff going on.
Yeah, like I'm anxious about asking someone that I look up to, like, can I come with you? Like I feel like a little kid, and I don't want to bother them. And I think that's like a lot of my generation. We're like, we don't want to be a bother. We don't want to like get in the way. But that's like, that's the thought I initially have, and that's the thought like most of the other people in my age group would like initially have.
Have you ever had somebody do that? And can you explain how that worked for you or not? Is there something that comes to mind?
Yeah, I'm on full-time staff at a Christian camp.
Okay.
And our staff is really small, and so like we're a pretty tight-knit community, and there's this one lady that works there who's like, I don't know, she's probably in her 40s or something. I don't really know how old she is, but
Not my grandparent, maybe not my parents, somewhere in that middle. I got you.
she'll just check in on me every so often, and she'll be like, hey, how are you doing? Like, do you want to get coffee? And I'm like dying to. I'm like, yes, please, please, please.
Oh, wow.
And like I want so badly to learn from her because I look up to her so much. But like I also know she's so busy, and there are like so many other people that she like speaks into their lives and stuff that I don't want to like.
You don't ask.
I don't want to ask because I'm like, she's too busy. Like I don't want to bother her, even though like I know I can learn from her, and like I know she probably will make time for me.
Okay, so here's a little bit of full disclosure for me. I would say, I'm just gonna speak for me, I'm not gonna speak for my generation, because I think personality has a lot to do with this style and all this stuff. But for me, I'm thinking, you know, if I were to, I could easily take you to coffee, Isaiah to coffee, because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull out of you, how you doing, what's going on, how about your views, journal, that. But it seems like arrogance for me to say, let me show you how to do it, something. So I'm thinking it's arrogance, and that's where it's like,
We're missing each other all
I
the
know
time.
we're missing each other, that's what I'm trying to say. It's really interesting. Okay, so it reminded me something that, okay, when I was coaching, this was like in my 30s, and this kid was 17, and he told me his spring football, and he told me his goals, and he wanted to play D1 football. I was like, okay, that's cool. And the one thing I asked him, I said, Josh, will you allow me to coach you to that level? What do you mean? Well, it means I'm not gonna celebrate if you come in, I was a defensive back coach. I'm not gonna celebrate if you come knock the ball down. I'm gonna celebrate if you blow the guy up, right? If you hit the ball or you intercept it or make a big play, I'm gonna celebrate. But if you do something you ought to do, I'm not gonna celebrate with you. Are you okay with that? And so, what I'm thinking of is I kinda wish I could have kept that mentality and just, okay, we're gonna have coffee, in the expectation part of it, you say you wanna be a pastor, you wanna be a minister, a worship pastor. I wish I would've said this, I'm gonna do it next time. Would you allow me to coach you to that level? Because there's some things I think you need to do. You need to know what I learned from Dick Young about a walk with God. You need to know what I learned from him, Dick Young, about sharing your faith. That's the piece I missed. Thank you. That's good.
I think like
Yeah. Yes, sir, yeah.
Yes, consider me an outsider looking at a fishbowl over here right now, and I'm so, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah.
You know, I see 3 generations over here, and I really feel that it's probably important for us to go ahead and know the levels that we're at right now, as far as mentorship is concerned. And I'm listening, and I'm like, okay, what wealth I have over here, right? Allow me to stereotype. I have a baby boomer over here that probably knows how to go ahead and pick out the best wood out there, right? Feel it, smell it, it's not rotted, that's good wood. I have a Gen X over here that will probably know what to do with that wood and make it into a sturdy chair, okay? My Gen Y over here probably, that chair is not good enough. He needs the full experience. It's probably gonna put that in a room that has the best ambience and whatnot, so he can reflect and learn from. The way I think about it on the mentorship, the type of mentorship coming in from Dick to Galen to Isaiah, 2 different worlds too as well, wherein he's gonna go and tell the facts. He's gonna go and tell the strategies. But Isaiah needs to go ahead and have the experience in order for him to go ahead and spread it. But what's constant though?
The wood.
The wood, and then what Corey's talking about this morning, the virtues that we have.
Yeah, that's true.
It's really good.
And I'm just like, yeah, thank you.
It's really good. Thank you. Yeah.
I don't wanna open a can of worms, but would you like to share, cause you know, we had a situation where you were mentoring someone and you did give them the humble test and they didn't do well. Is that appropriate? I mean, because it's not all gonna work out well, and trying to work with that person to try to get them back on path. I don't know what you wanna share, but I do think it's a healthy contrast that when you're mentoring someone, sometimes you get to a fence and you're trying to figure out how to work with them through that.
Yeah, well, let me go back to a situation, this one's a little too fresh, but I'm gonna go to a different one.
Okay.
Because I think this is from my coaching stuff, but it's like, I have seen enough, of people that go out and do damage. And so I've seen that enough to know, okay, I would rather be, what would you say, blunt? Even though that's not my nature, is to be blunt. My nature is to, I'm not doormatty, I'm not blunt by nature. But what'll cause me to be blunt is if I can see this person who's gonna go out and cause some pain for themselves or the church, right? The kingdom. I mean, it's like, so that's when I have the courage to do that. And in one particular case, this person, I could just see there was, if they don't have humility, I mean, humility to me, there's a lot of, I don't know why, but that's a litmus test for me. I'll try to find out if there's humility. If there's humility, if they can come back and say, I was wrong, or this, or what, anything that's even sort of humble, really, really means a lot to me. That's a litmus test for me personally. And in this one particular case, this person, there was not humility. There was, wasn't really an arrogance. It was more, maybe, it was really self-confident, really, really impressed with self. And it's like, man, this is gonna do some damage. And I think I hit him, not hit him, but I hit him pretty hard. Those kind of people typically are the real strong John Wayne type personalities, and they can take a shot right in the forehead, right? And if you don't hit them, they're not gonna feel anything. You've gotta hit them direct. You don't have to be ugly about it, but you gotta be direct. And I was direct with this person, and I said, here's what I'm concerned about, because the lack of humility, you're gonna do some damage and hurt. And I will just say, sometimes I've had a couple of situations, one turned out well, and the other one, it's like, they're not in ministry, and probably shouldn't be, at least not yet, because they're gonna do some damage. That's a strong litmus test. I don't know if that's a mentoring thing. That's more of a, I don't know what that is really, but But I think in the process of this, you know, trying to bring people up, I don't want people to go out and fail and hurt them or hurt others. And if I can be a little bit more bold on the front end, I'm willing to do that. And so that's some of what you experienced. It's out of love. It was. It
Yeah,
was.
and that's something like I wanted to touch on real quick is the constant with mentoring and how to make effective mentoring and is constant love. Is one of the biggest things that I took away from this place when I was here is that I've never felt more loved, like other than like from God, but like in a place of work, is if you feel loved, you feel valued, and if you feel valued, you feel a part of something. You feel like you actually matter, that they care about what you do and how you do it. And how to earn trust is to show trust, and those are two big things within, like, I know my generation is like you need to feel valued, like, and you need to be valued, not just feel valued, but and especially in mentorship, what he was saying is like it is about just loving people and being there for people and showing them that this person is not just a number, this person's not just a employee, that this person is.
Well, and I'll tell you something you did right to give you some. You called me up and you said, "Hey, I just want you to know, here's my track with education." You didn't have to do that. I think you texted me just the other day. I'll tell you what that did for me. It's like, wow, he respected the fact that I was really pushing on that. And I will tell you, you get that. That's where we're hitting. You know, we can miss each other, but now you're hitting because you gave me respect, and it's like, okay, I can speak into this guy's life, or I can. I'm pulling for you harder than you even know. It's because of that. That's really reason. Somebody back here.
But I was gonna, your comment just now about directness, I really appreciate that. Sometimes I think we dance around too much instead of just saying, this is what needs to happen. I'm seeing this, I wanna stand alongside you and just guide you through that. I'm not gonna tell you exactly what to do, but I wanna be here for you. And so, we try to not hurt people's feelings too much, and so we aren't direct and we don't do those things. You say, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna have coffee with you and see how you're doing, but you're missing the directness of, here's your guidelines of what needs to go. But also something I noticed in this 3-level tier that we have here, one of the things he mentioned this morning was be the same person at school, at work, all the way through there. And I just heard that from all 3 of you. You know, when you walked into the bar, you were the same person you were when he walked into the church. And when he's asking for you to be, I want to be able to trust you. Well, they can't trust you if you're not the same person when you're in all 3 of those things. And if you're showing him any difference, he's not going to trust you, and he's not going to follow you, and he's not going to give that respect back to you. And that's a really core thing about being that genuine person consistently all the time, even if it's wrong sometimes. Oh, I know he's not going to like this, but I know that he's not going to like it as a pastor, and I know he's not going to like it when he's sitting in the bar, and I can be careful with him in that area. Even though he's wrong, he's consistent. And that's something that we have to be genuine with other people so that we can develop that trust. Otherwise, your mentorship's just never going to be there. I just saw that, all 3 of you, all 3 layers, that just kept coming back.
Good number, thanks.
Yeah,
A few more minutes, yeah.
I just wanted to, break it down even a little bit further, just that all 3 of you have been in ministry at some, like official ministry and stuff, but really mentorship isn't just for the leadership of the church, it's for everyone who's a disciple and follower of Christ.
For sure.
And that is something that, we don't practice regularly. I mean, as an adult in college, that was an expectation in the campus ministry I was part of.
Yeah.
And I miss that. I mean, I miss coming up and saying, hey, I need to check in with you, how you doing, that kind of thing. And just that, seeking the calls and seeking the Timothy's and that kind of thing, that needs to be a regular practice in our congregations. And it's not an expectation that happens because we're all a Google generation now.
That's a good point. We're all in it. That's true.
I think the connection
That's good.
that I struggle with is like, I know that I should be a mentor and I should be helping people and I should be finding people and I need to find somebody, I need to have somebody pouring into me, but I don't know how do I do that?
Yeah.
How do I connect with somebody, how do I connect with my Paul or whatever, like, I just like, hey, can you mentor me, or, you know, like, and that's where I struggle, it's like, I know I need a mentor, but I don't know how to get one.
And, you know, I mean, there's been situations where I've
Right.
kind of met somebody, you know, and it was like the Spirit just set it up, and it's like, hey, let's do coffee, and then you get, you know, you do the little speed dating thing to see if that's gonna be a situation that leads to a mentoring situation. But really, just that first step of saying, hey, would you have a half hour this week, you know, we could get together and have a cup of coffee or
Tell me
something.
what I know now. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, Mary.
Well, I started a whole mentoring program at our church, and I prayed over every single couple of women that I would set up, an older woman and a younger woman. Now, they both had to be willing. They had to be on the list, you know, of wanting to be matched up. But it was a beautiful thing when you'd see this 70-year-old talking to this 20-year-old in the lobby and loving on her kids as they run around amok, you know. And that's when a whole culture shift happened in our church, when these older women were literally taking these younger gals and just training them up to love Jesus and love their kids and love their husbands. And it just shifted so many things. And it was to be so bold to say, I need mentored. Would you mentor me?
Right.
I want to start something new in my life and in your life. Because trust me, she's just as nervous to be that role.
So true.
But
No, I totally agree.
but
You gotta-
she
It's gotta be, I think it does have to be a value, and it has to be set up and then connectors, people that are willing to help, because it's hard, it is hard for everybody. And even when you're the pastor, like I'm just like you, I struggle with okay, I'm gonna impose myself on you.
Right.
Oh, that's such a truth. And then the desire on the other side for that to happen, it's so different.
It's a
There's very-
disconnect, isn't it?
Yeah, because I like you, I had to go get it, man. I would pursue it, but it is a total
But
different mentality.
if you really parse it, I think, what I'm thinking is, I don't wanna impose myself, it's really a false humility.
Sure,
A value of humility, that I'm being
Yep.
so humble, I
Yep.
don't think you need this, it's like,
right.
that's not humility, that's
No.
being, I'm being reckless, I'm not.
So we need to be a little bolder, don't we?
I think, that's what I'm thinking from the
And maybe
first
that
time.
model where nobody grabbed me, I had to go, that's the only way I was gonna get it. Whereas maybe, yeah, I need to grab somebody, cause that's really the right way to do it. Reach down, pull somebody up.
I think
What's your name?
an important part to like factor in this is the Great Commission, you know,
Yeah.
it is go to all nations, but also it says to make disciples. And it doesn't say wait till disciples come to you.
Right.
Yeah,
And
True.
those,
point.
this is exactly
Oh.
words from Christ.
Okay, it's not, this is over, shut the thing off.
There you go, Isaiah.
Hey,
Very good point. So, is Isaiah ready to go ahead and mentor the older generations? It's not always going cascading down.
That's true.
So what about you, Isaiah? How would you go ahead and mentor someone like David? I mean, you know.
That's a really good.
Well, you're right. Maxwell has this 360-degree leader, and he teaches you how to lead down, how to lead across, and how to lead up. And you do have to know how to do those things, because just because somebody's above you doesn't mean they don't have it all figured out.
Well, I mean,
No, it's
the
true.
aspect of mentoring upwards, it comes with personal relationship. Like, mentoring and discipleship is never about numbers, it's never about just doing it just to do it. It's about knowing the person, and once you find out where they're at, that's where you could come along and say, hey, this is my perspective, and this is how I feel like I could pour into you in this area, because we have different views of life, different experiences, we've read the same passages and different views, and this is how I've taken out from it, but it's all rooted from personal relationship.
When having the right person, like Isaiah, you can speak to Gail and he's open to hearing your insight. And Dick is the same way. And so if you really want to learn from someone who's younger, you have to be able to relate on their level and understand, well, maybe that's a little bit of the Google talking, but I can see this gold,
Yeah,
you know, and really
I can't see myself,
receive
I
that.
don't see myself mentoring that.
I don't know. I bet you if you asked Dick, there was something that you did that
Well,
helped him.
yeah. Okay.
He's like, I don't know.
Think how you mentioned me today about training a horse.
Well, I didn't, yeah,
Think
but
how
I showed you what.
think how that insight was, how helpful it was to me.
Yeah. But it wasn't like I was trying to fix it, I was showing you
No,
how to
it's
fix
sure
me.
life together, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just.
No, that's a good point, though, that's a good way to do that. Okay, Google generation, would you pray for us?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this time that we get to be here and talk and learn from one another and through experiences, through failures, through highs and lows, God. And we thank you that we could look at where we're at and look how far we've come and recognize your hand of redemption in all of our lives. We praise you and we pray that you give us wisdom and courage to go out and make disciples and the wisdom to build personal relationships within that. I pray that we all get home safely. And again, thank you for this time, Lord.